The coolest people I know on this list, we find a Kansas and Missouri licensed real estate agent and mentor and mom, and a person who was a former researcher and now finds herself in real estate. But truly, I think the thing I'm most excited to talk to you about today is, which is going to sound so strange, but is Kansas. Kansas. I want to
Kansas.
hear about Kansas City. Um, Laura Wonder, welcome to the coolest people I know.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you have me on.
It's so good to have you on. I'm so glad that we got connected.
I know,
Um,
me too.
so you, I think we got connected through a mutual friend, and
Yes.
you guys got connected on TikTok because you share Kansas City and that kind of general ethos in common.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I started a TikTok page, honestly, to get comfortable in front of the camera, just talking in front of the camera. And I was like, I need a topic to talk about. And I am obsessed and probably annoy everyone I know too much just talking about random things about Kansas City. And so that's where I met our mutual friend. And we have built a community there. And now we have meetups and all kinds of things. But I mostly talk about like Kansas City history and just random facts about Kansas City. And yeah, it's turned into a really cool community.
That is awesome. Kansas City seems like a very niche kind of topic, especially because Kansas City feels very much kind of like flyover country. It's not
Yeah,
it's not necessarily like, hey, let's talk about Kansas City. It feels,
right?
I'm probably going to age myself, but there's a movie from the 90s, Wayne's World.
Yes, I
Not
know what you're talking about.
okay. There's
You look at
always
me
this
like,
scene. Well, I don't know, like, if like how old people are. I never
yeah,
ask, but I'm always kind of, there's this scene where they're like Delaware. But like Kansas City feels very much like that. First of all, I have to ask because I don't know. Are we talking Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri? And why is there two, or are they one? And why would that happen?
exactly, right? Like there are so many questions that stem off of where is Kansas City? Like it's got to be somewhere near Kansas, right? You would not be surprised how often we get that question, both in comments and just in my everyday conversations with people in real estate too, like people moving to Kansas City, especially if they're coming from out of state. But to answer your question, there are multiple Kansas cities. And the fun thing that they decided to do was put them right next to each other on the state line. So there's
Oh,
a Kansas
not
City,
confusing at all.
right, not confusing at all. So there's a Kansas City, Missouri, also a Kansas City, Kansas. I will say that most people, when they think Kansas City, they're they should be thinking of Kansas City, Missouri. So that's where you see the skyline, all of that. Like if you search Kansas City skyline, it's going to show you Kansas City, Missouri skyline. If you're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs or the Kansas City Royals, both their stadiums currently are in Kansas City, Missouri. So they're on the Missouri side of the state line. So yeah, generally people are talking about Kansas City, Missouri. Locals will know if you're talking about which side based on context, but also if you're talking about Kansas City, Kansas, a lot of people refer to it as KCK. So it's Kansas City or KCK. And to make it even more confusing, there's actually a third Kansas City, which is North Kansas City on the Missouri side. It's a smaller city, but it's its own municipality, has its own, police department and all of that. So you could really go down the rabbit hole of how many Kansas cities are there really, and who's controlling them, and all of that. But yes, to answer your question, there's multiples, and they're all right next to each other, really
That
close.
is awesome and definitely not confusing at all. So,
Right.
what I guess what brought Kansas City to life for you? I mean, this is, again, it's not necessarily something a lot of people talk about, or
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
I was born and raised in Kansas City, so this is just my home. And then over the years, eventually got into real estate. So even more so, needing to know all the ins and outs of Kansas City. And I have always had an interest in the history of places. So, of course, being local to here. I've known certain stories and then looked into certain stories, and people are like, how do you even know that? And I'm like, I was just a book nerd at one point. Still am. I shouldn't say one point. And so just like in researching these things, right? And so it's always funny because like in my TikToks, I will give like this happened on this specific date. And people are like, how do you remember all that? I'm like, oh no, I have to like look up the dates and stuff. I just have I just know the general story in my head. But before I like do my TikToks, like I have to, yeah, I have to look up all the details, make sure I'm saying them right too, you know? Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Kansas City, I guess when I think, I'm born and raised Pennsylvania. I've always been kind of an East Coast person. I think a lot of kind of the story of like the East Coast, or like when I talk to friends out Washington, California, that kind of thing, a lot of the story of kind of the Midwest, besides the fact that it's massive, is that hey, there's nothing there. It's kind of the place that you fly over when you're going to Texas, when you're going to California, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So it feels a lot like flyover country. I've read a lot of, very familiar with like Sarah Kenzier's books, where
Yeah.
she actually has a book, Flyover
I
Country.
was going to say, isn't it called Flyover Country, one of her
It
books?
is a
Okay.
fantastic, and she talks
Yes.
a lot about Missouri and a lot of the history there and that kind of thing. So what makes, you're born and raised, what makes Kansas City not a place that's flyover country? What makes it a place that somebody would want to live?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Kansas City is so unique. So I've been to so many cities in the United States and abroad. I still have yet to find anything just like Kansas City in terms of the community and the people here. There's a hospitality that you don't generally see, especially like when comparing it to, say LA and New York and things like that. We're known to be very just kind and welcoming to people, which sometimes that freaks people out. They're like, what are you trying to sell me? Like, what are you, do you need something? That gets very off-putting to some people, but I think it's also refreshing to so many people as well. And it's just something you don't find in very many bigger cities, I will say. And so although Kansas City isn't, a massive city, it still is on the map. I wouldn't call it a flyover city, So it is it's just, yeah, it's so unique. Our city is also so expansive, like it's so big. Like people are like, you'll be driving and within 30 to 40 minutes, you're still in Kansas City. Like most people are like, how can you still be in Kansas City? We've been driving for almost an hour, And like in terms of our metropolitan, especially, there's so many counties and everything. There's just so much to see here and just so many different cultural aspects, community, and all of that too. So,
Mm, that's fantastic. I love when people love the place they're in,
yeah.
because it's one thing when you are in a place and yeah, I live there, but it's something different when you love that place and when you truly have roots there. What is kind of the thing that when you're bringing people around there, or that when somebody's new to that city, what's the thing that you're like, oh, we have to see this?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things. I will say that I will dive into more of like who they are and what excites them because I guarantee you we can find that pocket somewhere in Kansas City, right? So whether it's like an art scene or whether it's, the music scene or nightlife or whatever, like Kansas City truly has these different pockets and areas for not just entertainment, but just those different types of communities. And so there's so much to see in Kansas City. So that's what I will say also is like, it's not a flyover country. Like, you guys have to come see us. You got to come see it because it is such a cool city. It's growing so much. So that's the other thing about it is there's the history of it and things to see. And yeah, also all the exciting new things that are recent and continuing to change as well.
What's leading to the growth?
What's causing it, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the cause of it, one, is that we have so much land. Like there's so much space here in Kansas City. And so it's gotten a lot of companies excited to invest in Kansas City. So we have major companies like Google and Meta that are building data centers here that are bringing jobs and other things here, but it's also just because we have the land to build those type of things here. So with that, I think companies investing and putting tech here in Kansas City and how the world is just gravitating more and more to technology and AI and all of that, that it's just naturally causing more growth here. But then I do think like people are moving here not just for jobs, but again for like the types of community and culture that we have here. And when people come here, they might come here for a Chiefs game or something, but then they see how cool the city is and how cool the people are too. And they're like, they really strongly consider, moving their family here or coming here. So a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. It's always good to hear kind of like about cities that are kind of expanding. You kind of hear
Yeah.
about, cities that are kind of collapsing over their own infrastructure,
Right. Or within
nowadays.
themselves, right? Like, yeah.
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 Yeah, so that's
So,
good to hear. And especially too because cities seem to be um becoming so kind of expensive nowadays that they're
yeah.
almost impossible to live in. It sounds like
Right.
that's not necessarily the case where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like I think all of us across everywhere are kind of seeing the inflation and feeling it right in our pocketbooks. But I think comparative to other places in the United States, Kansas City is still considered very affordable. Even our home averages are still below $250,000 for a single family house here. And when looking at the metro as a whole, and I think the national average is over 500,000. So our houses are still almost half the cost of the average around the US. So I feel like when you talk to locals, they're like, oh my gosh, stuff is getting so expensive. But I feel like that's with every city. But then yeah, on a bigger scale, when you're comparing, it's still somewhat affordable for everybody.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my weird question that I always ask about places like this. And I asked this because my wife and I, we went to visit. We were in New York City. I forget what building we were in, but we were going on a tour, and uh, all the other people on the tour, like it was a book tour, and all the other people backed out last minute, and so it was just her and I. And so the tour guide was like, "What do you want to do?" And we told the tour guide, tell us the tour that no one has ever seen. Like, tell us the
Yeah.
things like you can't share with anyone, like the dirty underside of things. What's
Yeah.
kind of like the thing in Kansas City that you're like, oh, this is like the dirty underbelly. This is the scandal kind of thing. Like, what's that like
Gosh.
either historical thing or like the thing going on now, or like what is that kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Oh gosh, we get that's so many rabbit holes, but that excites me so much because there is so much, I will say, like dirt on Kansas City, like in terms of like its history and stuff. So we have a huge history with, if you look up Kansas City Mafia or the Kansas City Mob, there are a ton of stories with that. Yeah. Tom
What?
Pendergast. Yeah. If you look up Tom Pendergast era, also there's just so much corruption that happened in Kansas City, um, dating back to like the 1920s and so. And with that as well, it's still those things that happen still have a ripple effect even into today. So like for instance, like our Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is not operated by the city. It is actually operated by the state. And so and the reason for that is because of the corruption that happened decades ago. And so we are one of the only cities that the state like controls like the police department. So it's really interesting. I think like St. Louis at one point also had the state controlling it, but it's since got its privileges back, I should say.
It
But
got
um but
permission to
Kan-
run itself.
but yeah, but Kansas City is still not. So it's interesting like all of the corruption, kind of the underbelly of that was happening in Kansas City for so many years, is still impacts Kansas City today. And so, yeah, it's just an interesting city. And you wouldn't think a lot of our buildings too came from, money that was infiltrated during that time
Mob
period. Like
money.
that like came from partnerships and political powers that were in place and deeply connected to kind of the underbelly, the mafia. So
Wow. So like what
yeah.
kind of like mob are we talking? Are we like I mean, is it like, you know, running liquor during the, prohibition kind
Oh,
of thing?
yes.
Like,
Yes. So you can think Prohibition. They also ran like the nightclubs in Kansas City. If you talk about, yeah, just they had control over every industry, I would say, within Kansas City. So whether you were trying to like at one point, like even if you were trying to say like build a new street or needed a concrete truck, like you were dealing with people that had to get permission or connections like with the mafia at some point. So like I said, there are so, and there's still like families that, are here in Kansas City with the same last names, of course, right? And with all of that too. So the prohibition, all of that, also tunnels. So we have tunnels throughout Kansas City, like
okay,
in the underneath part of our city, but also there are neighborhoods that because of the mafia had tunnels connecting houses to one another. So it's and those are really cool to see. So I always love showing houses in those neighborhoods because they don't come on the market too often, but when they do, it's fun to go.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, are those the kind of things that people can get into? And I mean,
Yeah,
are
so
those
I have
tours you can give?
no, they're not. Okay, so I will say the tours from house to house because all these houses are still like privately owned, right?
Oh,
Most of them have been like closed off, but I have seen into the tunnels. I'm not brave enough to go into those tunnels, but it's creepy because it's like you'll go into the house and you go in through the garage and downstairs to get into the basement. You have to go through the garage, and in the basement there'll just be a random hatch door like a metal one that you can open up and it's literally just a tunnel, like a dark tunnel. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm
wow.
not going to be brave enough to go in there. But like I said, I've seen them. And then we also have the major tunnels that are under Kansas City. Again, most of them are blocked off. I don't recommend disclaimer, I'm not telling people to go and search for these. But yeah, but if you do talk to locals, especially like people that connected to the bar scenes and stuff. A lot of the bars and stuff, or some of them, have direct connections to those underground tunnels. So it's it's cool. Would you go?
That crazy. Oh, in a second. I love
Really?
that kind of
No
thing. Oh
hesitation.
yeah.
You'd be
Oh
in the
no,
tunnel.
zero. Yeah, I used to do that kind of thing when we lived in Philly. There were a couple of like very abandoned buildings, and
Yeah,
there was an electric company building in a neighborhood called Fishtown, and there was one time that the fence was broken down, and so it was
yeah.
just like, well, let's go. And I mean, it was
Like,
seven
let's go see it.
stories up to
Oh
the
my
roof.
gosh.
The roof had like trees on top of it, and we're just like, why have we wasted our life not being in here? So,
Right.
oh yeah,
That like I would do buildings. I can do buildings and stuff. I just don't think the tunnels like just creep me out. Like I would just, yeah, that claustrophobia or something, but it would be too
there is a
creepy.
difference going up than going down.
Right? I don't know why. Like, I'm not saying like, because even some of the, old buildings that haven't been taken care of or whatever, right? Like the floor's probably not that stable, but I'm like, we could risk it, but don't put me in a tunnel. Like, I won't go. Like, that's
That's
not
fair.
an adventure I want to be a part of. So,
No, that's
yep.
totally fair.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Like I said, I always love hearing about somebody who loves where they live, and I think
Yeah.
especially too because you're like, again, there's there's something endearing about the Midwest, but it really does get a bad rap, especially from
Yeah.
us who live on the coasts because
Yeah.
it's considered flyover country, and
Yeah. And a
we
cow
hear,
town sometimes, like they think it's just fields out here and nothing cool and exciting going on. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Now I think, okay, so last question about Kansas City. So legally, do you have to be a Taylor Swift fan in order to live in Kansas City?
Since you're asking me, I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
But if you looked at the law books, no. So I
o-
will say that I feel like right now she is kind of the queen of Kansas City in so
Okay.
many aspects. And I don't know. I'm hoping that Travis Kelce continues to play here just so that we can still like claim her as the queen of the city.
That's fair. And that includes after the last album?
I think so. Are you not a fan of it?
I don't know. It was only okay.
You see, when I will say that I wasn't all for it when it first came out. It had to grow on me. But now that it has, like I can't shut it off. Like I still have the vinyl on my record player, like here in the same room. So it's like I'm a fan of it.
Wow. Okay, and you mentioned vinyl too. Big vinyl collector?
No, not yet. I will say not yet. We just started our collection. I didn't realize that vinyl was kind of making a comeback. And then when I've talked to people, they're like, "Oh yeah, we've been like collecting." Like I have friends that have collected it for years and stuff too. And so yeah, we're just now dipping our toes in, and it's been really cool. What about yourself?
I am also just starting, and so
Okay.
you're right. Like it's kind of becoming an addiction because
Yes.
there's something about the sound. Like I can't
Yeah.
put my finger on it, but the sound is drastically different.
It is, yeah. And I didn't think that there would be, like, people have said that before, and I'm just like, oh, like, I don't know how it would sound different, right? Like comparing like a CD to like a song playing on the radio, I don't really notice a difference. But yeah, definitely on a vinyl, it does sound different.
Yeah, it's
It's a
very
different
weird.
vibe, different
Yeah,
vibe, you know? So
yeah, definitely. So, well, thank you for sharing so much about that. As
yeah,
part of coolest people that I know, that I know, we always do a question from a hat because we've got to throw some randomness in here. And
how
so
fun.
instead of a hat, I actually have this large spinny wheel
Oh
that
my
I've
gosh.
created. Some of these are serious, and some of these are not so much. So I'm hoping that we get some different ones. We've had the same couple ones that have come up, but here we go.
Now let's see
Let's see what happens.
what the universe throws at us.
Ooh, when was
Ooh,
the last time you felt truly at peace?
oh my gosh. I am gonna be the weirdo that's like every day. Um, I meditate every day, so it gives me grounded and yeah, in just a content mind space. And I feel like that's where creativity and helpfulness, when especially being in a service industry, is important. So
Interesting. What tell me a little bit of what meditation looks like for you.
yeah, so I do various types of meditation. So there's where it's just silence and sitting. And then there's also like guided meditations that are really helpful, especially if somebody hasn't done meditation before. You can, just on YouTube and stuff, look up guided meditations that are so helpful, especially if you're a person like me and it's like your brain is running 100 miles an hour constantly and you have 50 tabs open in your mind of things that you're trying to keep track of. So meditation has really helped me stay focused and like I said, get that peace and that grounding of also seeing, okay, what should I be focusing on? What are my priorities? And also just getting a little more enjoyment out of life instead of always being or feeling like you need to be so productive.
Hmm. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, good on you. Yeah, I feel you. Like it kind of puts you into kind of like a center, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be kind of like that. I think a lot of times people think of meditation as kind of like that big spiritual exercise or something that you've
Yeah.
got to spend hours doing a day. We
Yeah.
kind of
No.
picture that big monk, in
Yes. Yeah.
the Buddhist
With
temple,
the
but I'm like,
hum. Yeah. And the
yeah,
humming.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
with you. Like my brain is like always, like 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
if I can get like 5 minutes a day to kind of
Yes.
center myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the more often you do it, even if it's just a couple minutes throughout the day, yeah, it can make massive changes in your life and just how you go about the world.
Mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last question then, and we always ask the same last question. So, Laura, if somebody were to ask you the question that you've always wished to be asked, what would that question be?
So I love this question so much because you can go about it in so many different ways. In tying it back to Kansas City, and maybe you kind of asked it earlier, just about why people should consider Kansas City, or why should somebody consider Kansas City like a place to call home? And to answer that, I would say not just affordability, but the community and then also the growth. So there's just a lot of cool things happening in Kansas City. We have the CPKC, which is the first women's sports arena that has been built here and is continuing to expand the growth along our riverfront here in Kansas City. But then, yeah, the affordability that we talked about, and I'm gonna like smile so hard, but like just the community here. I love the people here. If you don't come for anything else, you should come for the people. But also, there are so many cool landmarks, and if you follow me on Kansas City Wonder, you probably know all about them. You also know about the tunnels and things too. So, but yeah, just the history here, the history here, and all the growth that's expected, and we're already seeing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Laura, where can people connect with you online? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am on Facebook, Laura Wonder, and then I'm also on TikTok as Kansas City Wonder.
Awesome. Laura, this whole podcast is about finding the coolest people that I know, and you are definitely in the list of the coolest people I know. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing so openly, and I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great.
Definitely. Thank you.